My name is Elias, and I never thought I would have to tell this story. I used to believe that the worst thing a person could experience was being forgotten. I spent most of my childhood feeling like a ghost in my own home. I was the shadow that moved through the hallways. I was the quiet kid who learned to make his own sandwiches at age 6 because his parents were too busy chasing a life that didn't include him. But I was wrong. Being forgotten isn't the worst thing. The worst thing is being remembered only when you become a prize. The worst thing is having the people who threw you away come back, not to ask for forgiveness but to ask for a percentage. I am sitting in a room filled with the ticking of 100 clocks. They are old. They are beautiful. And they are the reason my own flesh and blood is currently trying to ruin my life. I want to tell you how I went from being a discarded child to a target. And I want to tell you why I am finally done being a victim. I grew up in a small house in the suburbs. My parents, Caleb and Monica, were people who always wanted more than they had. They wanted a bigger house. They wanted faster cars. They wanted to be the couple that everyone envied at the country club. I didn't fit that image. I was a quiet kid. I liked fixing things. I liked taking apart old radios to see how the circuits worked. To my father, I was a disappointment because I didn't want to play football. To my mother, I was a burden because I required time and attention she wanted to spend on herself. When I was 12, they decided they were done. They told me they were going on a long trip to work on their marriage. They dropped me off at my great-uncle Arthur's house. Arthur lived in a cabin at the edge of a deep forest in the mountains. He was a clockmaker. He was a man who spoke in short sentences and smelled like cedar wood and machine oil. My parents didn't even pack a suitcase for me. They just handed Arthur 2 cardboard boxes of my clothes and drove away. "We'll call you in a month," my mother said through the window. That month turned into a year. That year turned into a decade. They never called. Not on my birthdays. Not on Christmas. Not even when I graduated high school. I was just a box they had checked off their list. Arthur saved me. He didn't do it with speeches or big gestures. He did it with work. He sat me down at his workbench on the very first day. He pushed a broken pocket watch toward me. "Time is the only thing we really own, Elias," he said. "If you can respect the clock, you can respect yourself." He taught me the craft. He taught me how to handle tiny gears that were thinner than a human hair. He taught me that if you are patient enough, anything broken can be made whole again. He became my father. He became my world. For 15 years, we lived in that mountain cabin. We fixed clocks for collectors all over the world. We lived a quiet, meaningful life. Then, last winter, Arthur passed away in his sleep. I was heartbroken. I felt like the world had gone silent. The ticking in the house felt like a heartbeat that was slowing down. After the funeral, Arthur's lawyer called me. I expected Arthur to have some debt. I expected to be told I had to sell the cabin. But Arthur had a secret. He hadn't just been a local clockmaker. He had been one of the world's most sought-after restorers of ancient horological artifacts. He had invested his earnings for 50 years. He owned a massive collection of rare timepieces that were worth a fortune. And he owned the 500 acres of timberland surrounding the cabin. He left everything to me. Every gear, every acre, every dollar. The total value was estimated at nearly $9 million. I didn't want the money. I just wanted Arthur back. I stayed in the cabin. I kept working on the clocks. I didn't tell anyone about the inheritance. But in a small mountain town, news travels like fire through dry grass. A local newspaper ran a small piece on Arthur's passing and mentioned the vast estate left to his sole heir. 2 weeks later, I heard a car pull up the gravel driveway. It was a silver Mercedes. It looked out of place against the mud and the pine trees. A man and a woman stepped out. They were wearing expensive coats. They looked like they belonged in a magazine. Took me a moment to recognize them. It was Caleb and Monica, my parents. I stood on the porch, holding a brass polishing cloth. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Elias?" my mother said. She wiped a fake tear from her eye. "Oh, my sweet boy, look at you. You've grown into such a handsome man." My father stepped forward. He tried to put a hand on my shoulder. I stepped back. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice was flat. "We heard the news," my father said. He didn't mention Arthur's name. "We were devastated. We've been trying to find you for years, Elias. We lost Arthur's contact info during a move. It's been a nightmare." It was a lie. I had lived in the same place for 15 years. My phone number had never changed. "You didn't find me," I said. "You found the money." My mother's face hardened for a split second before she forced another smile. "That's a terrible thing to say to your mother. We're here because we're a family. We heard you were overwhelmed with this big estate. We wanted to help you manage it. You're just a clockmaker, Elias. You don't know how the world works." I told them to leave. I told them if they stepped on my porch again, I would call the sheriff. They left, but they didn't go far. The next month was a living hell. They didn't just go away. They moved into a hotel in town. They started talking to everyone. They went to the local diner. They went to the church. They went to the hardware store. They told a story that was designed to destroy me. They said I had kidnapped Arthur when I was a teenager. They said I had run away and forced Arthur to keep me hidden. They said I had used elderly abuse to convince Arthur to change his will. They claimed Arthur had been suffering from severe memory loss and didn't know who I was at the end. My mother started a blog. She called it A Mother's Search for Justice. She posted photos of me as a baby. She wrote long, emotional posts about how I was a troubled child who had been manipulated by a bitter old uncle. The town started to turn. I'd go to buy groceries and the cashier would whisper to her coworker. The mailman stopped saying hello. I received anonymous letters in my mailbox. They called me a grave robber. They told me to give the money to the rightful parents. I felt like the walls were closing in. Couldn't sleep. The ticking of the clocks started to sound like a countdown. Then the legal papers arrived. My parents were filing a lawsuit to overturn the will. They were also suing for wrongful death, claiming my neglect had led to Arthur's passing. They were asking for $8 million. I almost gave up. I sat at Arthur's workbench and looked at the gears. I thought about just signing it all over. I just wanted the noise to stop. I wanted to be a ghost again. But then I saw something I hadn't noticed before. It was a small hidden compartment in the back of Arthur's favorite desk. It was triggered by a specific clock key. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a small digital camera. I opened the journal. It wasn't a diary. It was a logbook. Arthur had recorded every single time he had tried to contact my parents over the years. He had kept copies of letters he sent them, asking them to come visit me. He had kept the return receipts showing they had received the letters. He had even recorded phone calls. I turned on the digital camera. There was a video file dated 2 years ago. It was Arthur. He was sitting in his chair by the fire. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "Elias," Arthur said to the camera. "If you are watching this, it means they've come back. I knew they would. People like Caleb and Monica don't change. They just wait for the weather to turn." He went on to explain exactly why he was leaving everything to me. He talked about the day they dropped me off. He talked about a phone call he had with my father 5 years later. In the video, Arthur plays a recording of that call. My father's voice is clear. "Look, Silas, don't call here again. We've started a new life. Elias is your problem now. If you have money for him, keep it. Just leave us out of it." Arthur looked back at the camera. "I am of sound mind, Elias. I am making this choice because you are the only one who ever saw me as a person, and not a bank. Do not let them take your peace." I sat in the dark and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was finally armed. I hired a lawyer named Sarah. She was a local woman who had known Arthur for years. She was furious when she saw what they were doing to me. "They want a fight?" Sarah said. "We'll give them a war." We didn't wait for the court date. We filed a countersuit for defamation and harassment. But we did something else first. My mother's blog had become very popular. She had thousands of followers who believed her lies. She was even planning to do a television interview with a regional news station. The night before the interview, I posted the video of Arthur. I didn't add any commentary. I didn't say anything mean. I just posted the video where Arthur plays the recording of my father saying I was his problem now. I also posted scans of the return receipts from the letters my parents claimed they never received. The internet is a strange place. Can destroy you, but it can also be a mirror. The reaction was instant. The Mother's Search for Justice blog was flooded with comments. People were disgusted. The news station canceled the interview. The supporters who had been hounding me online suddenly went quiet. But the real victory happened in the courtroom. The hearing was short. My parents showed up looking like they were attending a gala. They still thought they could win. They thought they could argue that the video was a fake. But Sarah brought in a digital forensics expert. He proved the video was authentic. She also brought in Arthur's doctor. He testified that Arthur had been in perfect mental health until the very end. Then Sarah called me to the stand. I didn't look at my parents. I looked at the judge. I told the truth. I told him about the cardboard boxes. I told him about the sandwiches I made myself. I told him about the man who taught me how to fix clocks and how to be a man. They didn't want the child, I said. And they don't want the man. They just want the gears. The judge didn't even need time to deliberate. He dismissed the lawsuit. He called it one of the most transparently malicious filings he had ever seen. He ordered my parents to pay all of my legal fees, and he issued a permanent restraining order. They were banned from coming within 5 miles of the cabin or the timberland. As they were being led out, my mother tried to scream at me. "You're nothing without us. You'd be in a foster home if it wasn't for us." I didn't say anything. I just watched them go. They looked small. For the first time in my life, they didn't look like giants. They just looked like broken parts that couldn't be fixed. That was 6 months ago. The town is quiet again. People wave to me now. Some of them have come by the cabin to apologize. I accept their apologies. Life is too short to hold on to gears that don't turn. My father and mother moved away. I heard they are living in a small apartment in the city. They are still fighting with each other. They are still looking for a miracle that doesn't involve hard work. I still live in the cabin. I don't spend much of the money. I don't need much. I used some of it to create a scholarship for kids in the foster system who want to learn a trade. I want them to know that their value isn't decided by the people who leave. I also hired a young apprentice, a kid from town who reminds me a bit of myself. He's quiet. He likes to fix things. Yesterday, I sat him down at the workbench. I pushed a broken watch toward him. "Time is the only thing we really own," I told him. He looked at me and smiled. He understood. My name is Elias. I was a ghost. I was a burden. I was a target. But today I am just a man with a lot of clocks. And for the first time in my life, every single one of them is ticking in sync. I am not waiting for anyone to come back, because I am finally exactly where I am supposed to be. I have found my own peace, and that is a legacy that no amount of money can buy. Would you like me to adjust the tone of the ending, or perhaps change the profession of the protagonist to something else?